Welcome to Hustle Estate from good old New Jersey and Detroit, Michigan. I'm one of your hosts, Isaac Gilman.
And I'm your other host, Ed Hendrickson.
Week 8.
Is it really week 8?
I think it is week 8.
That's pretty crazy.
I think, okay, all right. I think if I remember correctly, okay, so technically it might be week 8, but it hasn't been like 2 full months yet.
Okay.
Because I think I started working from home March 16th or 17th.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been, I believe, if I'm counting my weeks correctly, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
Good to know
7.
You still know how to count.
This is week 8. Yeah.
And he still remembers how to count.
Yeah. I'm remembering a few things.
And only a few.
I feel like it's not like obviously new normal. A lot of people might be talking about, but I'm talking about like from a work perspective. If I can get daycare back up and running at some point, like I could easily see myself working from home for like the rest of or like working not from an office for like the rest of my life.
So it's interesting you say that. I was actually just on a call today with one of my borrowers and a fairly close confidant, I guess you can say. And she was telling me that she's in the process of trying to break her lease actually. For her commercial space that she has for her office.
Wow.
Because she can't go in, right? Because you're not supposed to like be in offices and stuff, number one. But number two, she's like, I'm not going to get an office, I don't think, ever again. We were saying that maybe she would get a WeWork space because what she has going on right now is she, as the owner of her business, has realized that everything can be done remote. So she's like, there's no reason for me to have an office space. I've asked my colleagues and, my employees, subordinates, whatever. And some of them have said that they would prefer to be able to go back to an office one day when this is over. And now she's like, what do I do? Like, do I get an office space? Like, I think it's unnecessary. Some of my, employees still want an office space. So I suggested to her, and not that she'd ever, maybe listen to this, I don't know, whatever, but she was like, I suggested WeWork space. She was like, yeah, it's not a bad idea, but she'd almost rather just like push her employees to be like, we don't need to have an office space. And even if she does like a team meeting like once a week somewhere that she's like buys breakfast for everybody, she's like, I'd save so much money by not having this office space. So it's just like you said, I mean, I think that a lot of businesses are going to think about this. A lot of businesses have gotten away with working remote and realizing like we don't need a space. Even a large company that is used to like bringing people in and wowing them, you can just get a WeWork space or something, or have like a really watered down office that has a conference room and people can come in. If you want to do that, if you want to have the showy space. I know like a lot of companies in the city like that. They like to be able to say like my address is this specifically. And you can still have that, but you don't need to have potentially thousands of people coming to an office anymore.
Yeah, I think that's the key is like, obviously it depends on, your company and the size of it and whatnot, but I think the commercial real estate space is probably going to change pretty drastically, at least from an office commercial real estate standpoint. I mean, maybe like even like e-commerce wiping out malls, right? Like, I mean, I think that's a real thing for many retail industries, at least. I don't see a reason why a company needs to, have an office for 10,000 people, maybe an office for 1,000 people, right? Like our company, I mean, I've been on leave for the last month, or not exactly a month, but a few weeks now. And I don't know what their plan is now because I'm kind of like disconnected from the communication. I imagine that they're still like kind of pushing things back in terms of like getting people back into the office. I do know they have a few jobs that require, handling paper, receiving mail, because like closing packages, things like that. I know probably discussed it, but like I just don't see a need for me to go back into the office like ever again. I do think there's an opportunity to go in for like meetings or like maybe some team building things, and to your friend that you talked to point, like there's definitely opportunities to, you know, kind of lay a foundation in an office, but that doesn't mean you have to change your way you work. You could still work remotely, but maybe, you know, you spend a week in the office when you first get hired just to get like a feel of things. Maybe like you build a little camaraderie with your team. You know, whatever. I don't know exactly what it would look like, but I do still see need for space. I just don't see the need for the same amount of space.
Yeah. I don't know if it'll drastically cut kind of to your prediction, I think, the way you were saying like a 10,000 down to 1,000 type of thing. But I could easily see 50% drops, 40, 30% drops even on the lighter end, because if I just look at it, if you're a team of 10, is there ever a point to have all 10 in the office? So you can simply just say, let's only have 5 in, and we can rotate those 5 people on a week by week basis. So that way, you know, everybody's kind of coming in. You could have some sort of rotating schedule, whatever, however it works. Maybe you're 5 weeks in, 5 weeks, whatever they do, but just so people can come in and maybe have a place to go. Or for those that truly feel like they need an office space. But I wonder what happens to them, because that's kind of life, right? You know, our parents, you know, are used to a certain way of doing email, right? When that changed for them, it became a different way of doing things. And, you know, now it's text messaging and Instagram. And is it kind of an evolving of that? Like, you know, either evolve with the office space, or you are going to have a tough time finding a job. Like if you can't work remote, like if you're not okay with it, you might have a tougher time finding a job in the future.
Well, you know, it's interesting you say that, because so the reason I even bring all this up is, so today in our boot camp, we had like some scheduled one-on-ones with like I don't know, like the program managers of the boot camp, and they were just like, they asked the question because this is their first time doing a remote boot camp. In the past, they've done them all in person, and before, you know, COVID, I was anticipating being in basically a classroom. I mean, it's not in a school itself, but it's in like a classroom-like environment. And their question to me was like, how's working remotely? And I was like, oh, I've worked remotely before. It's not a problem. In fact, I kind of like it. Like I'm not opposed to like the remote idea, and I think there is value in like being in person, because like, you know, I've literally never physically met anybody else in the boot camp. We've only met via Zoom. So it'd be like interesting to meet people, but what I really like is the instruction. Like basically I have 2 screens at home, and I would only have 1 screen there, and they would have like a bigger screen where they would do a lot of instruction and like demoing and stuff. But I like that I can look something up on my computer while watching what they're demoing, and I can even split my bigger screen, because I have like an external monitor, in half, right? Like you can, the Windows or the Apple, how you can kind of partition your screen to like have half, you know, web page half taking up half the screen, then maybe like my code editor taking up half the screen, and then Zoom. So really I have like 3 screens kind of, you know, and if I wanted to buy another external monitor, I probably could, and I could really have 3 screens. And it just, I feel like for me at least, and I realize this isn't everybody, but like for me, the learning is just a little smoother. I mean, honestly, like I think like when I think back to college days, you know, it was a lot of just like listening, staring, and I was taking notes, I was trying to be engaged and stuff, but like in this type of environment, in a boot camp where you're learning coding, like it's nice. I think, I don't know, it just seems to work better.
When you point it out, especially to education, it does make me think a little bit like, what really is the purpose? Like, besides, socialization is a huge thing, right? But, and connections and networking, but outside of that, watching a teacher teach up in front of you versus on a computer screen in front of you, like, what's the difference? I mean, you can raise your hand in any one of these Zoom calls. You press the button, the teacher comes over every once in a while, he looks, he's like, oh, Isaac, you got a question? He unmutes you, you ask a question. Other people will probably, you know, thinking the same thing. Now you don't have to worry about people who can't hear you in the classroom, because everybody hears you. It's the same volume. I mean, there's so many benefits from it.
What I like, I think probably the most, and I did experience this when I was leading remote teams and working remotely, is like I can share a screen. Like, so right, there's a concept in computer programming called pair programming, and the idea is I type and somebody kind of dictates. So like we're both learning, but one is kind of doing more of the problem, like the thinking, and the other person is kind of doing the action. So like if you were to tell me what to type on the screen, I would type it. So then you don't have to kind of do two things at one time.
Right.
And you and I can share each other's perspective, right? So you could say like, here's how I'm going to solve the problem. Okay, you go about it, and then I'm like, no, that actually, I know this isn't going to work. Here's why, right? And we can have discussion, constant engagement, constant discussion about it. You can do that in person. It's very easy to do, but you literally sit next to each other and do it. Whereas here, you both have access to a screen because you can share screens, and I could like, so we could be sharing a screen, and I could be using my second monitor to look stuff up, and they could look stuff up. So it's a little bit more efficient to do it. Now, yeah, I mean, you do leave out some of the physical like camaraderie building, but I don't know. It's really nice. I think overall there is going to be more and more opportunity to work remotely, especially if you think about our kids, right? Like they're going to grow up with just better remote technology, better remote tools, like Zoom. I don't even remember. I mean, obviously email and lots of technology was built when we were growing up, but like teleconferencing was just, if it was a thing, it was not a normal thing. It was probably
when we were
like
kids,
for
it
the
was something on
wealthy people.
It was something on Star Trek when we were kids, I feel like.
And like our kids will just like Zoom is obviously, it's been around for a bit now. Skype, right? We're using Skype right now. That's been around. I remember using Skype in college. Like
I remember
10
when
years
we
ago.
started doing Skype. I mean, besides that we've been doing this for a while, like it was like weird to be video conferencing.
Yeah.
But it's just so natural now, except that I feel I'm supposed to look at the camera and not look at you, right? That's everybody's been saying, which is weird because now you're staring at this light and I'm not even like, it's worse than, I can't look you in the eyes. I'm trying to look you in the eyes by watching you on the monitor, but instead I gotta stare into the light.
Right? Like our kids will just be like, a phone call will not be a thing. It'll be a FaceTime.
Yeah.
It will be a Zoom call. It will, like, yeah, maybe you phone, like you use the phone to, call Comcast, but even maybe not, right? Like,
Yeah.
just maybe not. I don't see things like augmented reality and virtual reality will take over at some point. It's a matter of time. And so remote work, I don't know if it's like adapt and die type of mentality, because there's still plenty, like, right, manufacturing, right now you have to go to the plant to do the job, right? The post office, for instance, part of that has been virtualized with email. Part of it, though, has not. Like if you want to return a gift, you virtually can never, I don't know how you would ever do that.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to completely take out a person-to-person interaction, but there's certainly going to be less of it. I mean, let's even first, like, we can go down a huge path. One thing I do want to talk about is how it could be a huge environmental impact, right? So we're looking for ways to make the environment better. Companies have said, oh, how are we going to do this net effect and all this? I still have to drive, well, I can carpool. How about companies just say, oh, we want to have a good carbon footprint, work from home, right? Way less cars on the road, less buses needed on the road, less trains needed on the tracks, theoretically, if enough people went ahead and did it. You look at dude, I've driven along the water here now on the waterfront. It's amazing, literally amazing to see nobody on the water. Has never happened for me. Like I drove down yesterday and I saw one boat. And Kevin looked at me and said to me from the back seat, was like, "Daddy, a boat!" Like it was like a shocker to see a boat in the water. So I think that number one, it can help with carbon footprint. And the other thing I wanted to touch on is we all have very short-term memories. So we're saying this right now, like we think, oh, this is great, yeah, that like it's going to go away, blah blah blah. But at the end of the day, my lease isn't up for 3 more years. Okay, so we're going to go back to the office. We're going to have spend the next 3 years in the office, and then that lease is up. At that point, are people this won't be fresh in your mind at all anymore.
No,
and you're going to say, what are we going to do? But I do think that if anything, it will, whatever rate we were at, it's going to accelerate that rate without a doubt.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think it provides opportunity to change the way we work, right? Whether it's, like an example. Let's tie it into real estate, right? Imagine if the cities or counties or whatever, the jurisdictions that have to do a lot of processing of information to, complete a real estate transaction. Imagine if they could become more digital about it. And I'm not saying like they need to spend tons of money, but like imagine if you could get a permit pulled via Zoom, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe eventually they build out a better like technological process to like get pulling a permit.
Let's not worry about Zoom. Let's just have a better website for a county.
Well, right, but better websites can be more expensive than having a person manually process a permit, but using Zoom. Imagine if you could like get in line and do it from your house. Like I know our Secretary of State, which is basically like the Department of DMV in Jersey, plus a little bit more. Like they have the option where I could get in line remotely, and then by the time I'm there, I know that like my ticket is called, and I don't need to actually wait in line. I get in like a virtual queue. So I feel like those are the opportunities if you think about it from a real estate perspective. Obviously, there's like e-notarization. There's like the bigger things, but those things take tremendous amount of time, money, and people. There are other things that don't take it, that you can just use the existing tools out there to like redo the process.
Right.
So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think it'll be interesting to see as this happens. This isn't like going from scanning to emailing, right? Or like faxing, emailing, right? What happens to this space now? What happens to New York City, right? So many people who are commuting into the city, like, I mean, I don't know what the numbers are, but I'm sure it's something crazy. Like if 1 million people live in Manhattan, 5 million people are in there like during lunchtime, basically, right?
Yeah.
But
yeah.
If you take away all those people going in, what is Manhattan?
Yeah, it becomes
besides a tourist attraction, right? It'll always have that. But I mean, that economy completely shifts. But it's not like the dollar's not going to be spent somewhere. They're going to spend it. They'll have Chipotle delivered to their home or something.
Yeah, their local communities will build up. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. I think for the real estate industry, what you do on a daily basis, or even what like my companies do on a daily basis, I think not only does the opportunity to complete transactions, like not only can those transactions can change, but then like the people building the tools to change those transactions, like myself and you, we can change. Like we don't have to go to the office to build that technology or to like complete a transaction. We can do it from our home or a coffee shop. Like not even thinking about the virus. Like take away the virus is solved.
Yep.
Coffee shop, WeWork, whatever. It doesn't have to be done the same way.
Completely agree. I mean, that's exactly what I was saying to this woman that I was talking to, is that it just be a coffee shop. Like you can just kind of go to that same coffee shop every day. Or what I was doing for a little bit, I was going to a different coffee shop every day, just like try different coffee shops out. I kind of made it like an interesting thing to entertain myself a little bit. It was like, let me go to a different coffee shop every day.
Yeah, I like that. Change the scenery.
That can happen. And then again, like meetings can be done there. I think it'll just be, you don't see conference rooms at a coffee shop, but don't be shocked to see conference rooms at a coffee shop at some point in the future.
Sure.
Coin it, you hear it here. It's the first time I ever said it, first time I thought it. I'm opening a coffee shop.
Perfect.
With the conference room.
With conference rooms. All right, you want to, I think that's a good way to end it. You want to wrap it up?
Sure. Well, thank you everybody for listening here today. We really appreciate it. As you know, you can check us out on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and iTunes. If you want to email us at hustleestate1@gmail.com. And on our social media platforms, we're on Twitter and Instagram @hustleestate. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.